When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Baker's, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Baker's worth it every time. Baker's, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
In the darkest corners of the internet, a nameless, formless entity has been growing. No one dares question where it was created or what it wants, but those who have been entranced by its musings chant its blood-curdling name in unison. Horror Movie Night!
Find Horror Movie Night on your favorite podcasting app or at hmnpodcast.com.
Is this the real life? Is this just fantasy? Caught in a landslide, no escape from reality. Open your eyes, look up to the skies and see.
Matt, we are basically done Alapalooza.
Oh, we got one left.
And this is an interesting one to talk about.
It really is.
Because
it really is.
I don't think Al's really done anything like this since, right? He's always done a medley. This is the one time where he is just like all in on a singular song. As far as we can tell, this counts as the second ever cover that we've covered by Al behind George of the Jungle.
Sort of. So Al does, on Al's website, he catalogs all of his music, and he absolutely, this is just firmly classed as a polka.
Yes.
Not only a polka, I should say, it says on the website, polka medley.
Which is very deceiving because I know what the word medley means. And
well, yeah. I mean, you know what's interesting about it is that it still feels like, in some ways, it feels like a normal medley of his because Bohemian Rhapsody already is a song with all these different moments and changing parts and stuff. So and Al even leans into some of those changes in different ways himself. So considering the fact that it is a polka style cover of a single song, it does feel not that different to a typical Al medley, an Al polka medley, I should say. At least not to me.
Furthermore, let's talk about it sounding not all that different. That is a direct quote from Mark Jenkins of the Washington Post when reviewing the album, and he felt that the polka didn't sound all that different from the original Queen song.
I mean, you know, the form is the same. It's hitting the same marks. He's certainly changing some sections, the way that they play. There's the middle... I don't want to jump ahead too much, but the middle bit of this with the Mamma Mia, we will not let you go. For Al to fit that into the polka groove, that took some real clever, that was some fancy maneuvering to make that work with a oompa, 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 oompa the whole time. Because on the original, that just drops meter for like a long portion of time and it's not like in steady time. Al had to be clever. And you know, the other thing I looked up on this, Al does still get his Earbooker polka writing credit on this.
Yeah.
Despite the fact, and if anything, that's the thing that makes it the most classed as a polka medley in my mind, because that's what makes it different than a cover. The fact that Al got Queen to give him writing credit on this, I mean, that's kind of amazing on its surface.
Yeah.
But that does speak to the work he puts into doing these. It's not just a cover. Al didn't get any writing credit on George of the Jungle.
I can't help but wonder how relieved Al was to like have this song from the 70s make this massive comeback because of Wayne's World, knowing that he has to do a polka medley, that he's basically locked into it expectation wise.
Yep.
And then piecing together like, well, this song is already like a medley of different songs.
Yeah.
And that like that light bulb going off of like, hold on a second. I have a slightly easier job than normal with the polka medleys because I'm not trying to find certain points to connect thematically all these songs. I can just do the song and treat the different sections of the song as elements of a medley.
Exactly.
That I get to change things up with.
And it's a dorky song. I mean, like, even before Wayne's World, this is exactly the sort of thing, like, first of all, let's point out and let's give some kudos to Wayne's World, which gets two straight up references on this record. The fact that Bohemian Rhapsody is polka'd and the I Was Only Kidding.
Well, no, I Was Only Kidding is not on this. I Was Only Kidding got moved to another album because Al didn't think that it was culturally significant by 93.
So two separate albums worth, but still he has dipped into the Wayne's World. Okay, then that's an even better point, Matt. He was worried that Wayne's World was going to lose relevance by the time this record came out, and Wayne's World was so relevant that he doubled down and did a Bohemian Rhapsody spoof. I'm going to call it a spoof. That's the easiest way I can distinguish.
I was going to say, this has more in common.
Things.
I would say this has more in common than the Bad News cover that we discussed on the previous Al TV than it has with a lot of Al's other polkas. Because
perhaps, yes,
it is. I think you're right. At the end of the day, this is more of a spoof than a parody in Al's, because it's really taking the original song and like almost poking fun at the absurdity of the song, which was an absurd song at the time it was released in Queen's repertoire.
It's never not been crazy.
Yeah.
It's never not been crazy. And yeah, he is poking, well, he's doing exactly what he does best, arguably, which is that he is poking fun at it while also highlighting how impressive it is. Yeah. And now I don't think people need Al to point out that Bohemian Rhapsody is an impressive piece of music. I think everyone gets that. But that's what he's doing here. He's goofing on it. He's making jokes while at the same time, highlighting the glory of the whole thing. And it is glorious.
I have to ask you, I assume that this is the case because we're about the same age. Were you, like me, someone who discovered this song because of Wayne's World, or did you already know Bohemian Rhapsody before you saw Wayne's World?
I was late to Wayne's World. I did not really see Wayne's World as a kid. The short answer is I don't really know. Okay. I don't know where I've heard this song for the first time. It was.
I definitively know it was Wayne's World for me.
I'm sure it wasn't Wayne's World.
Okay.
But I couldn't tell you why I know this, or why. Like when I first heard Bohemian Rhapsody.
If you were late to Wayne's World, then you could have just heard it because of Wayne's World outside of that.
That's most likely. That's most likely to be the case. Yeah.
Because I think that this is one of those cases, and we have these happen every once in a while, where, I mean. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that if you went on like the Billboard database and looked up Bohemian Rhapsody, this would be one of those weird songs where it says like single release date, like blah, 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 1970, whatever. And then peak date would be like 1993. Like I am similarly to, I believe this is the case with your band.
Hey.
Where Teenage Dirtbag, I think, charted higher because of the TikTok trend than at the original time that the song came out. I think that Bohemian Rhapsody had the same vibe, that it was at the time like an appreciated but not a well-performing single in the grand scheme of Queen, and then Wayne's World like skyrocketed it to being the song that people think about when they think of Queen.
So I just did a quick search on it, and you are correct in America.
Okay.
In the UK, it was number one out the gate. Okay. 1975, number one for 9 weeks. It also hit number one again for 5 weeks in 1991 after Freddie died.
Okay.
In America, in 1975, it peaked at number 9 on the charts. So that's not bad. It did quite well. But peaked at number 9 in 1975, peaked at number 2 in 1992, immediately following Wayne's World. And then it hit the top 40 again in 2018 with the movie, Bohemian Rhapsody.
Which, I have to bring this up. You have seen the movie Bohemian Rhapsody, correct?
I have.
Can we talk about the most insulting, on-the-nose line of dialogue I've ever seen in a movie?
Go ahead.
When Mike Myers plays the record store or the record label owner for Queen, and when they play him Bohemian Rhapsody, I believe the line is like, I don't know. This doesn't seem like the song that some dudes would headbang to in their car late at night. Like, it's like one of the most on-the-nose, insulting lines of dialogue I've ever heard.
I'm sorry. I hated that movie so much. I hated it. I apologize to anyone who watched this, who is listening to this show, who liked I know people loved the Bohemian Rhapsody movie. I always will say that, like, I think working in music, I really have problems with a lot of music movies, especially biopics about people who I know
Well, because
about.
Queen gets everything. That movie gets every element of Queen's story wrong.
Completely wrong.
It is
Completely
a
wrong.
fictional telling of a band that happens to resemble the band Queen.
And it's been retconned, like their story has been retconned by the band members themselves, because of course Freddie is gone, so it's the rest of the band like talking about this person's life in a way that like a lot of other people are like, just that's not true.
But here's what I'm going to say, and I think you agree with me on this. I believe we've talked about this, but the next year we get what I think is one of the best biopics in a long time, which was Rocket Man, which like was more factually accurate than Bohemian Rhapsody, but B, much more fun and fantastical with how they told that story. And like the whole point of the the whole point of the biopic being, hey, this is how Elton John tells the story. And Elton John himself admits that he's an unreliable narrator because of how many drugs he was doing at the time. Letting it be fun in that way. No, I agree with you, because as a person who's a music nerd, like, when I saw Bohemian Rhapsody in theaters, I thought it was fine. Mm-hmm. But I was like, something doesn't sit right with me about that. And then I like started reading. I'm like, okay, so all of this was made up. Like,
it's
Freddie,
a lot of
the band literally begged Freddie to put out a solo record. And like in the document or in the movie, it's depicted as if like that was the breaking point for the band.
Like he's selling out by going against their wishes. Every one of them made solo records. Every single one of them. Like that was actually one of the most interesting things about Queen.
Yeah.
Is that every single person in that band wrote and had their own. And they do talk about that in the movie. How every one of them had a hit.
Yeah.
Which is really impressive. I mean, that's super, super rare.
Yeah, that doesn't happen very often.
No. So they're all very, very talented people. But the fact that they kind of went out of their way to like, they also like, I don't think it's a reach. Like there's elements of that movie where they are basically blaming Freddie's confused. I'm saying this through their lens, not mine. They're blaming Freddie's confused sexuality on a lot of the band's problems. And that is just... I'm sorry. I mean, I didn't have to be there to know that it made me very uncomfortable the way some of that stuff was portrayed on screen.
It's a very, like, it's one of those movies where on the positive side, like, they couldn't have nailed the casting of people any better. Like, it was like, these people look like the people they're supposed to portray. Having Mark Martel come in and redo most of Freddie's vocals was a very good call. Like,
Rami Malek did a great job. I mean, I'm not like there's no.
It's a production from the production side of things. They did a great job. From the script side of things, it's just false. It's just and it's like it's trying to remove yourself from that and not like become hyper fixated on it is really hard, especially when it's a band that like I would say I've made this statement that the Beatles is the most important band in music history, but pound for pound, Queen is the most musically talented, important band in music history. Like
you could certainly make that argument.
Like it's just like they had the better frontman, they had a better guitarist, they had a better rhythm section. Like
they lasted longer too.
They lasted longer, but Queen
extended a longer period of time.
Queen is a beast of a pop band that did all the same things that like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and the Beach Boys did, which was like experiment with what you could do in a studio and like push the limits of recording. And I'm talking all about that now because in that sense, Bohemian Rhapsody is their magnum opus, most successful example of pushing the limitations of what could you do as a song, let alone a single, to promote an album.
It's true. It's true. And to expand on that a little bit, and this is just to give you some perspective on where I'm coming into this episode, as a result of all of that, like no one can ever dispute like Bohemian Rhapsody is a monumental achievement in songwriting. It's very, very impressive. Again, you don't need a musician to tell you that.
No, you
anyone
can just
listen
tell
to
that
that
it's
song
different.
and know that it's true. You can hear that it's different. You can hear what makes it. Sometimes on this show, even I'm like, why is this song special? And I'm trying to verbalize it in a way that is challenging for me. I don't need to do that on Bohemian Rhapsody, but with the movie, with the just general sort of cultural like return of that song over the last multiple times over the last couple decades, I will admit here, like I have Bohemian fatigue.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I need to hear Bohemian Rhapsody again in my life.
I just want to clarify one more thing because I wanted to check this to make sure I was incorrect. I wasn't incorrect. This is the lead single for this album.
Yeah.
And I feel like to put that into context of how weird of a choice that is, like, that is like if the Beatles released Revolution #9 as the lead single for the White Album. It's like, what is our most commercially unacceptable song on this record?
Something that John Lennon probably would have been into if
for sure.
if he was sober enough to wage that battle. But
I also agree with you. Like, it's one of those, I'll tell you my least favorite time to hear the beginning of Bohemian Rhapsody. At a karaoke bar.
It's brutal. Honestly, it is like, guys, please, when you do karaoke, do not do Bohemian Rhapsody. Don't do Living on a Prayer.
Yeah.
Don't do that. It's not a good idea. There's so many. I mean, we could do a whole other. I'll make a list of songs you guys should not do.
Another bad one I witnessed, Master of the Puppets. Don't do
Master of Puppets.
Don't do 8-minute long songs that are at least 50 to 60% instrumental breaks. Like,
don't do it. Kashmir. Don't do it. Don't do Kashmir. It's not a good idea.
Like, it's just do the short, quick songs. Like, I think about this all the time because there's certain songs that I would love to do at karaoke. I'd love to do Beck Loser. But what turns me off from doing Beck Loser is the last minute and a half where it's just the chorus over and over again in weird noises.
Yep. It's you gotta be careful, guys. It's not just because you can do it doesn't mean you should.
Same. Also going to throw that in there. I had a karaoke night at my house the other day. Hotel California. The ending of Hotel California is 3.5 minutes of guitar solo with nothing for the person on the microphone to do at that point. Like, you're just everybody is held as hostages until that song is over.
You have a responsibility as a performer, guys. You gotta be careful about these song choices. Don't do it.
But let's talk about Al's version of Bohemian Rhapsody, the Bohemian Polka. Right out the gate, big laugh from me. The big deep breath at the start of the song.
It's good.
Very funny.
Yes. Yes, very funny. I love the big breath. This is loaded to the brim with Al's like wacky sound effects.
Oh,
this
boy.
whole
is
thing.
the wackiest of his polkas, I think.
Yeah, like polkas generally have a lot of that kind of stuff. Like we've talked before about like his weird, like the sad trumpets with the mutes, and there's a lot of like kazoos and all this stuff. But this one really has like gunshot sound effects and the spittoon effects and all this kind of stuff. And it's great. I actually, like, sometimes I think when I hear those, I'm like, oh, is Al trying to insert sound effect jokes because the song is not, it's like worried that he thinks the song's not funny enough, so we have to pepper in more. And technically this song's not funny at all, but it kind of is. Like, even without that, it's, I don't know, it works well for me. I like it.
I was going to say, spoiler alert, this is my preferred version of Bohemian Rhapsody at this point in my life. Like, if I have to listen to the song,
faster.
I want to go into the Bohemian Polka. I love... And this could be because of my love of New Orleans jazz as well as becoming a bigger fan of polka over the last couple of years. But that little snare drum intro into the band kicking off is like chef's kiss for me. It's
great.
So good to just like kick off the song. I wrote down, it's been a while since I wrote these notes weeks ago, but I wrote down that the backup vocals on this song are just on point in a way that is like insane to me. Like,
they of course need to be for this type of a track. There's so many big vocal moments on the call and response stuff. From what I've read, I think on recordings, almost always the backing vocals are all done by Al. He just records his own harmonies and whatnot. Yeah. I can't tell if that's the case on this. It sounds like it might be. Not to jump ahead a little bit, but I did see the band have performed this polka live kind of a lot So I think they all did go to the effort of learning how to do this. This is a heavy lift vocally for everybody involved in the band if they're doing it live on a stage.
Well, and again, like we said, every time that Al does one of these polkas, he's doing these songs way faster than normal. And this is he is speeding through this like almost 7-minute long song to get it to like 3.5 minutes, I think is the runtime of Bohemian Polka.
This is very, very, very fast. It's a lot. I mean, there's also just a tremendous amount of it's really musically complex. There's a lot of chord changes, there's key changes, and even Queen are moving kind of fast through some of those changes, and Al is just blasting through. It's a lot to do. He's covering a lot of ground in a very small amount of time.
We get another thing that I shout out a lot in these Al polkas. Jim West on 2 different parts of this song is just tearing apart that banjo with a fast strum on the easy come, easy go, as well as the I see a little silhouette of a man parts. He is just ripping that thing at a lightning speed.
Great banjo. Also great, the polkas always feature this, but in this one especially, like there is a lot of very, very impressive lead accordion from Al.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of trumpet horn parts and stuff, especially towards the end, and kind of taking over what in the Queen version are guitar solos, and they're sort of doing like this accordion trumpet call and response solo, which is maybe the coolest musical section of the whole thing, in my opinion.
I'm going to say something that is a weird sentence to say about a weird Al polka. There are parts of this song where it breaks into a musical portion, and I get almost emotional by it because it reminds me of how good, as much as like we both have definitely hit Bohemian Rhapsody exhaustion, it's like hearing those musical parts played almost identical but slightly differently, like gives you an appreciation of just like how good it is, the da-na-na, 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 like there's these little musical licks that happen in between all these sections, and like I think of like the ba-ba-da-da-ba-ba-da, like it
right.
In a weird way, Al's polka version highlights the operatic, because this was on Night at the Opera, elements of the original song better than the actual song does.
You could make that case, absolutely, yeah. No, it's very, very true. I mean, and the thing that the Mike Myers character in the Bohemian Rhapsody movie is trying to illustrate very poorly is the idea that like a song like this can only be made. You can't make something like this if your primary focus is fitting into a particular sort of commercial appeal box, right? Like you have to just be like, this is just what I want to make, and it's in my head, and I think it's great, and either you're on board or you're not. This is like, you have to be a visionary, and like, this takes a level of creative genius that even some of the most talented people cannot actually fully access.
So, as we're talking about this, I'm also realizing something, and we're going to go all the way back to episode 1 of this podcast.
What?
When we talked about the Dr. Demento episode, we also talked about the artists who Al has been very upfront were inspirational for him.
Oh, yes.
This is, without denial, Al doing his Spike Jones. This is what Spike Jones did in the 30s, was that he would take a beloved song, and similar to this one, he would start it off mostly sincere, almost to the point that you thought it was the original song. And the prime example I always think of is the song Cocktails for Two, right? Like Spike Jones starts off the song with this beautiful angelic choir, the same way that the original song started. And then out of nowhere, the song goes, some secluded rendezvous. And out of nowhere, it's like gunshots playing the banjo, screaming like you're in a Looney Tunes cartoon as they just speed up this ballad and get it done in like a minute and a half suddenly with the most outrageous stuff. That's what Al's doing with this specific song.
In some secluded rendezvous that overlooks the avenue, with someone sharing a delight, chat, this and that, and cocktails for two. As we enjoy
More than any other I've always thought that his polkas in some way were inspired by Spike Jones, but this is legitimately him doing a Spike Jones song. He is taking a modern song and doing the Spike Jones thing with it, with, like you said, the wacky sound effects, with the like sped up crazy instrumentation, but like also in those Spike Jones songs, when they're speeding up the instrumentation, they're still hitting every single note of the original composition perfectly, just much faster and wackier while doing it.
Yeah, I hadn't actually thought about, it's another, like, it feels so obvious, and yet in the prep for this episode, it did not occur to me that this can be this is Al's Spike Jones influence, and also it is him revisiting one of the first most notable parodies he ever made is Queen.
Yeah.
Another One Rides the Bus, like, which
And
was,
he's not done with Queen. We're going to go back to Queen.
We are going to go back to Queen again. Yes, Al definitely loves Queen, but all the way back to, I remember the story, I don't have the exact quote anymore, about how, like, he did the parody, and Brian May, like, got in touch in some way and was like, this is great, we love your parody. Where's our money?
Yeah.
And Al, like young Al, was like, what? Had to learn some hard lessons about how royalties work.
Matt,
but,
I think you have that story completely incorrect, because I believe what happened was that Al was at a pool party with Dr. Demento, and Wolfman Jack showed up with the bass player from Queen, and he challenged him, and he won the challenge. I forgot about
that scene from the documentary Weird, which was Al's life as filmed by a camera crew in actual life. Yes, of course. Of course.
For sure.
That's how it happened, yes.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
In the darkest corners of the internet, a nameless, formless entity has been growing. No one dares question where it was created or what it wants, but those who have been entranced by its musings chant its blood-curdling name in unison. Horror Movie Night!
Find Horror Movie Night on your favorite podcasting app or at hmnpodcast.com.
91 Donkey Lane is a magical apartment complex that contains immense power but lacks intelligent inhabitants.
What is happening?
I'm getting texts.
Why are we getting a lot of texts?
People found out what we did.
Oh, dividing Mike Myers into an infinite amount of tiny Mike Myers?
Listen to 91 Donkey Lane for free on Spotify or your favorite podcasting app. More at 91donkeylane.com. See you there, you donkeys.
Something that I looked high and low for, but you are a much better researcher than me.
Mm-hmm.
There's a baby voice that responds to Al in the Galileo. To me, that sounds like it's a fairly famous female voice actor. And I can't put my finger on who. It could be like Nancy Cartwright or who's the Tress
McNeil.
Yeah, Tress McNeil. Like, it sounds like one of those voices that, like, Galileo, like that. But I couldn't find anyone that jumped out at me in the credits for who that was. I don't know if it's an uncredited thing or if that's just Al doing some voice modulation with himself.
Yeah, there's it could just be Al. That was my first thought, is because it just sounds like it's got that sort of like helium vocal effect, you know. There are two women credited for doing the backing vocals just across Alapalooza, but they don't specify song by song, you know, who's on what.
Because it just sounds like a cartoon baby to me. And then I'm like, who would be voicing a cartoon baby in 1993 that Al would have had a contact with? And we already know he's a Simpsons fan because he called out how he loves watching The Simpsons from 20 miles away on Frank's 2000-inch TV. So I was like, maybe.
I'm going to assume that the backing vocals credited for this record are more for like Waffle King.
Yeah.
And Talk Soup and some of those very big, like sort of soul gospel-y backing vocals
that are
those songs have.
definitively not Al.
For sure, definitely not Al or anyone in his band.
Yeah.
And then for this, I'm going to guess that it's Al.
Okay.
Running through a vocal effect. It definitely does have a weird, like I hear you, it's like almost got like a Simpsons.
It's like a Simpsons or like a
it.
Tiny Toon Adventures sounding voice to me. Like, and I've always thought that. Like, even as a kid, I'm like, who is doing this baby voice?
If I were guessing, especially at this point in time, I would guess that he sang that, they slowed the tape down, he sang it in his regular voice, and then they sped the tape up, and now he's singing in like a chipmunk, a borderline chipmunk vocal.
Love it.
That'd be my guess.
Well, look, when we eventually get Al on the show, we'll write this down as one of the many things I ask
Such
him.
a long list of questions for Al.
So let's talk about the ending of this song, because I love how this ends, right? You get the big instrumentation for like the guitar solo, the ba 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 da ba 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 da ba 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 da ba 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 ba, like it's very over the top.
Oh yeah.
And then it slows down and they do the like nothing really matters, bump bump anyone can see. And then as he always does, you get that repeat final line to wrap up the song. And it's the nothing matters, nothing matters, nothing matters. Anyway, the wind, anyway, the wind, anyway, the wind blows.
Hey,
like, it's so good.
It's so good. No, it's great. And again, you know, it's funny. Like I'm sort of prefacing this by saying I'm probably going to rank this not the highest among the parodies. Among the polkas, excuse me.
Yeah.
Because
you said that it's everyone is a step up, basically.
That's exactly what I said in the last episode. And this is maybe the first one that I feel like isn't. And it's just because it just feels like it has to be, like it's inherently less impressive to just do one song than to do the medleys the way that he typically does them and the way he weaves in and out of all of these things. Like Queen did... Don't get me wrong, Al did plenty of work making this happen.
But they did the heavy lifting.
Queen did most of it.
Yeah.
Most of it was already there, and it was just him trying to rearrange it slightly, or in some cases a big way, to fit it into to get all of his polka tropes in there the way that he likes to do it. But having said that, I do still think this is very impressive. It's great. I also like it. It's the only time he ever closes an album with a polka, and I actually think it's kind of great.
That's not true. That's not true.
What am I forgetting?
Dare to Be Stupid ends with the polka as well.
Oh, of course it does. Oh, boy. I just lost my credentials to do this show.
That's all right. You've seen Al live way more times than me. So
I can't believe I forgot about that. Yes, of course. Okay, well, then this is the last time he ends an album with a polka. And
because from this point on, we get Night That Santa Went Crazy, but then basically from Albuquerque on, it's the album closes with a marathon epic song.
It does.
Record after record.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, this is the last time trying. This is a big swing in its own right. It's definitely an unusual move. This is a real outlier in Al's catalog, as we started the episode saying. Like, there is just nothing else he's ever done quite like this. Maybe the closest comparison you could have is Hamilton Polka, but even that is still touching on multiple different songs.
That has
piece.
more in common with the Hot Rocks polka, honestly.
That and Hot Rocks are like a single artist, quote unquote.
Yeah.
That is encapsulated in one polka.
So the only other thing that while we're talking about this, it reminds me, because we're gonna have to rank this amongst the polkas, and we're gonna have to rank the Alapalooza album.
Yeah. Yes.
Alapalooza, the album, I think, is the last time that Al doesn't seem like he's falling into a specific album format. And what I mean by that is, I'm pretty sure, and we'll see if I'm incorrect here, but from this point on, Bad Hair Day all the way up to Mandatory Fun, there is a very distinct rhythm of parody, original, parody, original, parody, original. The polka always lands right around the like track 5 to 7 range.
Yep.
Original, parody, and then, like we said, big, over the top, epic closing track. Like he definitely figures out a format that just seems to make sense and kind of becomes what is the expectation.
Always an original to close, too, right?
Yeah,
I don't
always
think
an
there's-
original to
Always
close.
an original to end it, yeah.
Which is, when I'm looking at these other albums, like, the self-titled album, I think it was out of 12 tracks, 4 of them were parodies. And like on this one, we had the weird circumstance where the last like 4 songs on this album are originals and a polka. Like,
And then a polka at the end, yeah.
Like it's very... There was never a very specific format until we get to Bad Hair Day. So this is also the last of just like... As much as I think that Al does whatever the hell he wants now, this feels a little bit more chaotic. We'll do whatever the hell he wants. Where it feels like starting at Bad Hair Day, he's really locked into like finding that perfect balance of what the audience wants from him and what he needs to still do to feel satisfied. And I think that we're going to start to see, this is my prediction anyway. I think that as we go into these albums, I think that we're going to see from this point on a lot more parodies that don't hold up to re-listens and a lot more originals that like stand the test of time. Because I think that he's doing after this album, I feel like he is doing the parodies out of some necessity of appreciation, but knowing that that's what the people buying the record are buying the record for.
Yeah.
And that the originals are way more for his like artistic experimentation and him having fun. And that's where you're going to get the stuff like Pancreas and Hardware Store that are just like absolutely bonkers, off the wall, unmarketable ideas, essentially.
And yet he seems to come to realize that his most diehard fans, who at this point are multiple decades deep.
Yeah, that's what we want to hear.
Those people are going to be on board for those originals, and they're going to want to hear, like, because again, it's become, he said it when he started to do the vanity tours. He's like, I know that I have a percentage of my fan base who this is what they want me to do. He's very aware. And this is actually, this song in particular, I feel like sits in an interesting place for me because it feels in a lot of ways like it is a passion thing for him. Like, I think Al does genuinely love Bohemian Rhapsody, and I think this is very much right in his, must have been influential, it must have been a big thing. And at the same time, it is also capitalizing on the success of a major motion picture and trying to get a little bit of that that attention moved over to his record. So both probably a passion thing and a smart business play. This album is, interestingly, has both of those things pretty much in good measure the whole time through. Yeah. Real quick, because I think we're moving to rankings sort of soon, but did you see that I found online, if you look up Bohemian Polka, there's like, it's not a music video, but it looks like it was a video that they made for the live tour, but it's introed as if it was part of an Al TV that I think maybe we just haven't gotten to yet.
I
maybe
think
that's
that might,
next coming up for us.
So we don't have any Al TVs for Alapalooza, but in the time that Alapalooza came out and before Bad Hair Day, there was at least 2 more Much Music things that he did.
Okay, so it was probably one of those.
Yeah, so we'll see, because we're going to dive into them in the coming weeks. So I'm sure that we'll find out soon.
It's a video clip of him like yelling at the camera, going like, "I want to hear something. I want to hear a polka. Play me a polka. I want to hear a polka." And then it cuts to, it's essentially a dummy music video for Bohemian Polka featuring footage of both Queen playing live and scenes from Wayne's World.
See, I was so I wonder if it's the same as when he did the Taco Grande music video, because that's what the re-released Bohemian Rhapsody music video was.
It actually seems like this was more work was put into this than that. Yeah. Because again, the Wayne's World footage he tries, like the footage even sped up of Queen playing the song to try to synchronize with his.
Gotcha.
And from what I can see here, it looks like this was used on stage. Whenever Al played this song live, they had this on a video screen in the background for the audience to watch along while they were playing it. Another fun little side note about... I
happened to see that when I was looking on YouTube, but I literally thought it was just like a fan edit. So I just
It's not. Apparently, they actually used it live. It's pretty fun. It's satisfying to watch. If you just search Weird Al Bohemian Polka, you'll find it. It's
like the second thing that comes up, basically.
It's not an official music video. We're not going to count it for our video things, but it is still enjoyable to watch. Another fun little fact about this polka, according to somewhere I read online, I didn't fully fact check this, it is only one of 2 polkas Al has ever done that he played on more than one tour.
Oh, okay.
He played
What was the other one?
So he did it on the Alapalooza tour, of course, in 1994. And then he did a very, very large tour. It was just the year after, but it was a completely separate tour. In 1995, it was called the Al Can Tour, which is where he just did a very comprehensive tour of Canada.
Oh, okay.
But it was not an Alapalooza tour. He was pulling material from elsewhere, and he did do this polka on every night of that tour as well.
That explains, because I was very confused why he did a Much Music appearance in 93 and one in 95 when he had nothing to promote. He was clearly promoting the Al Can
was promoting
tour.
a big Canadian tour that he and his band did. Another fun fact, the live premiere of this song, according to Setlist FM, the first performance of the Bohemian Polka was on New Year's Eve of 1993, going into 1994, at Disney World.
Ooh.
Boy, how fun would it have been to see Al at Disney World on New Year's Eve?
Have you ever seen
in 1993? I think that might have been my single greatest childhood dream. have something like that happen.
Have you ever seen a band live in Disney World?
I have never seen a band at Disney World.
I've seen 2 bands in Disney World.
Wow, look at you.
Well, because there was a period in time where my family would go to Disney every year. And during the summer in Epcot Center, they have the American music stage where they get bands to play. So the first year we went, the day that we went to Epcot, Hanson was the band playing. So I got to watch Hanson play. And then the second year we went, it was Simple Plan. So we watched Simple Plan play a couple songs.
Wow.
Ironically, not an American band playing at the American band stage.
That's pretty wild. This is pales in comparison, but when I was, my family for years, I don't know if I've referenced this on the show before, we used to do an annual trip to Hershey Park. My entire extended family, cousins, aunts, uncles, everything,
Hershey
we would
Park.
all drive. And one summer we went there, and they would occasionally do like little live bands in the park, but like in an amphitheater, like where they're like, either it's a band playing or they're doing like the Check Out the Seals show, like some little like ocean thing. And the Jonas Brothers were playing like way, way early, like before they had anything. And funny enough, the only reason I watched them, I watched the Jonas Brothers play to like maybe 50 people. And the only reason I knew who they were at the time, because this was many years ago, I'd have to trace it back, is a friend of mine wrote one of their singles.
Oh.
And I knew the song because a friend of mine had written it and was like, oh, the Jonas Brothers are doing my song. I was like, well, that's fun. It was a song called The Year 3000. I don't know if you know.
I know
that's
that
like
one.
One of
That's a
one of
good
their
one.
earliest hits. Yeah,
That's a really good one.
My buddy James Bourne is in a British band, and they did that song in like 2001, I want to say, and was huge in the UK, but no one in America heard it. So he licensed it to the Jonas Brothers, and they had a hit with it in America many, many years later.
So that same Hershey Park venue that you're talking about, this is, for people who know Matt Kelly, this is the most insane story. But my class trip in 8th grade was to Hershey Park on a random Friday.
Mm-hmm.
And that particular Friday in the amphitheater was a Christian punk and ska music festival headlined by Five Iron Frenzy.
Yes.
And I literally rode no rides that entire day. I just was like, well, this is where I'll be, class. You can find me here later on. So I just pulled it up. So it is the Disney World Garden Rocks concert series in Epcot Center. And a few of the artists who just played there include Richard Marx, Berlin, Rick Springfield, Modern English.
Wow.
Scrolling through, the Pointer Sisters were just recently there. Flock of Seagulls, the Plain White Tees, Starship, Herman's Hermits played there recently. And then at the time that this episode comes out, which is, late April, early May, if you head to Disney on May 10th, 11th, 12th, or 13th, Simple Plan will be there. On May 17th and 18th, the Spinners will be there. May 19th and 20th, Sister Hazel will be there. And most exciting, May 24th and 25th, Lit will be there. So,
oh, wow.
I'm just saying.
You know what? Why is Wheatus not playing?
I was just
I gotta
about to
call our
say.
agent. Hey, anyone listening to this show, if you have any connections to Disney World, I want to play at Disney World. Is that so much to ask?
Here's the thing. At first I was like, We Just Can't Play There. Their biggest hit has bad words in it, but so does Lit. So
I was gonna say, yeah,
that goes out the door with that one. All right, Matt, where are you going to rank this amongst the polkas? You said that it's not going to be very high, but is it at the very bottom?
Let's see. You know what? Yeah, it is actually.
Okay.
And I don't want to. I'm not shitting on it too hard. I really don't think it's bad, but it's just, I think it's an outlier. It's unique. I actually like that it's so unique for him. But to me, it is just like, by definition, less fun and impressive than every other polka we've talked about to date.
Well, always going the opposite of you, I'm actually putting it number 3, below Polka Your Eyes Out and Hooked on
Thank
Polkas.
God.
This was basically my second polka that I ever heard from Al, and I still really like it. Listen. We talk about sometimes how we like the parody more than the original song. And I'm not sitting here saying Bohemian Polka is a better song than Bohemian Rhapsody, but I think it's the one I'm more likely to listen to anymore if I'm going to listen to the song.
I have to say, I agree with you completely. I don't like the idea that at this moment in my life I would sit down and put on Bohemian Rhapsody is like unfathomable to me.
I feel like the only time is if you're like, I'm going to sit down and listen to A Night at the Opera. Like
if I was listening to that album in full, then when it got to Bohemian Rhapsody, I would think about whether or not I wanted to skip it. And I'd probably get through some of the intro. I know. I probably would listen to it just in the name of, I am generally an album person. I really like to listen to records start to finish.
100%.
Which is now feels like I sound like I'm 90 years old, but it's just, I grew up that way, and
Matt,
listening to an album in sequence feels important to me.
This is why you and I are as good of friends as we are, though, because I want to physically own the album. I want to listen to the album from front to back. Like, the only time I want to shuffle something is if it's literally like a Spotify playlist of like 300 songs or something. Like, then I want some variety. Like, but if I'm driving, I just want to pop in an album and enjoy an album, like in its entirety. So
I think it just comes from like, I grew up with
a
CD player in the car, and I would buy a CD and put it in the car, and that's just how I absorb music.
1,000%. And speaking of a CD to put in the car, if you had every Al release that have been released up until this point, how likely is this going to be the one that you put in? Where would you rank it amongst all the other albums?
So, I've said before, usually on this show, I don't look at these lists until we're live. I rarely think about where I'm going to rank something before we start. But on this, I did. Because I looked at the list, and currently my dead last album is Polka Party. And I was pondering, like, do I like this more than Polka Party? Spoiler, let's just say right out the gate, this is a lower ranking Al record for me. I think it's very hit and miss. And
I've publicly said it's his worst album many times on this show.
I was looking at it against Polka Party, and I was thinking, like, what's the hit versus miss ratio? It's tough because I think Polka Party is also a little bit split. Polka Party has Dog Eat Dog, which I think is one of Al's absolute best originals. It's fantastic.
But this
Frank's album has Frank's, which is my single favorite Weird Al original. I did some like basic number crunching, and I just came to the conclusion that I think this album has more misses than Polka Party. I think it's close. And I think they're basically tied for like not my favorite, but I am putting Alapalooza last.
So I am putting it higher than you, which is shocking. Like I said,
that is shocking.
This is one that I've talked trash on quite a bit. But my final assessment is the same as you, which is that this is on par with Polka Party, and I think Polka Party is just a little bit better. Mm-hmm. So I'm putting this above UHF soundtrack and the Peter and the Wolf Carnival of Animals Part 2. Because in all honesty, for me, it's what is the likelihood that I will want to sit down and listen to this album from front to back. That is how I look.
Totally fair.
Approach each one of these. And like Peter and the Wolf and the Carnival of Animals is truly an achievement in its own right. It's not something I ever am going to actively pop into a CD player. Yeah. And the UHF soundtrack, I think, has the highest miss ratio of anything that he's put out. I know you liked it because it was so strange. It's such a strange release for him.
I would say that's really the hot take. I think my feelings on Alapalooza are not particularly controversial, but me ranking Peter and the Wolf above Polka Party and Alapalooza is probably significantly more controversial.
And putting UHF above all three
and
of
putting
those.
UHF above that. Yeah, those two are, I think, easily the strangest things he ever released, and I admire them for they feel weird and yet completely true to him.
Yes.
As opposed, that's my take. I think those albums feel like they are so true to his interest and taste and all that stuff. And Alapalooza and Polka Party, the things I don't like about them are the ones where I feel like it just feels a little bit phoned in to me in its own way. And the things that I don't like feel like they're just ringing slightly false.
But it's worth noting, Matt, that at this point in time, both you and I, our number one favorite Al original song is off of our least favorite Al record.
See, you gotta love that. That's what I was thinking when I did it. I'm like, can I really put this album in last when it's got what I'm calling my favorite Al original song? And I decided, yes, I was okay with that. It didn't occur to me that you had the same thing.
Yeah.
Of course, your number one is UHF. That's great.
That's delightful. Now, will that stay? Great. The next album we're looking at is Bad Hair Day, which is...
I know, there's some real heavy stuff on that record.
Yeah. And I'm
maybe
excited.
it won't last very long. Oh, I am very excited. Before we fully wrap up Bohemian Polka, classic Matthew move, I have one more thing to say. This was from the Ask Al thing on his website. Only sort of involved or related, but I still think it's a fun story. Kevin Brockway of Greenwich, New York asks, are you a fan of the classic rock band Led Zeppelin? Great question. That's a great question to ask a professional musician. If you are, could you polka some versions of their songs? Since you did a polka version of Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody, you could do Stairway to Heaven or Dazed and Confused. I think you sound cool if you did polka versions of Zeppelin tunes, don't you? Al responds, oddly enough, a few years ago, Jimmy Page called my office to get some copies of my videos, so I knew he was a fan. Unfortunately, when I asked him shortly after that how he'd feel about my doing a Led Zeppelin polka medley, he was less than thrilled. So I didn't pursue it.
All right.
So just a fun fact there. Apparently, Al actually did try to do a Led Zeppelin polka medley, a la the Hot Rocks medley, and got shut down by Jimmy Page, who liked him enough to call his office and request music videos. I sound old talking about making albums. That is like caveman speak. That is the craziest thing. Jimmy Page calling Weird Al's manager going, can you mail me the music video?
Some music videos. Now, listeners, we got to tell you, we're talking about Bad Hair Day. Hang tight. It's going to be a bit before we get to Bad Hair Day, because now we're entering a whole nother part of Weird Al's career where gone are the 1 to 2 year breaks before albums. We are entering the 3 to 5 year breaks before albums. And in between that time, so many television appearances and all types of other stuff. We are going to be covering a few things here. I'm giving you guys a little bit of a sneak preview. He's showing up on some TV shows for sure. He's got too much music appearances before we get to Bad Hair Day. We have to cover headline news. His one lone single that came out during that time. Similarly to what we did with the food album, we're going to have to do that with the TV album before we get to Bad Hair Day. And in the midst of all of that is a mailbag. So your burning questions. This is probably when this episode comes out will be right around when we're gearing up to record that mailbag episode. So if you have any thoughts or opinions, questions, etc., get them to us at weirdalgorithmpodcast@gmail.com. We would love to take your questions. So stay tuned for that, and we'll be back next week with something about Al.
With something. We're not intentionally stalling on Amish Paradise, guys, I promise.
No.
We're going to get there. We're going to get there. It's going to be great.
Listen, we're gearing up. I'm looking at it right now. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 songs on Bad Hair Day that currently do not have a guest booked for it. There is almost a 100% chance that we may have a guest on every single episode of Bad Hair Day.
We're going to try. We're getting there. We're getting there.
Yeah, we're going to really give that a valiant effort.
Yes.
And we'll be back with more Weird Algorithm next week.
darkest corners of the internet, a nameless, formless entity has been growing. No one dares question where it was created or what it wants, but those who have been entranced by its musings chant its blood-curdling name in unison. Horror Movie Night!
Find Horror Movie Night on your favorite podcasting app or at hmnpodcast.com.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.